Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Oraculos True Divination podcast, where I bring you ancient wisdom for the modern mystic. I'm your host, Mychal Bryan, and joining me today is astrologer extraordinaire, undoubtedly, Mr. Alphee Lavoie. Alphee, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. This is going to be great.
Yes, it most definitely will, Alphee. Now, for those of you who don't know who Alphee is, you definitely need to know who Alphee is. And at the end of this episode today, hopefully we'll fill that gap and bring you a little bit closer to Alphee and let you know about his mammoth work that he's done for us all as astrologers. But before we get into that, if this is your first time watching the True Divination podcast, this is a podcast where I bring you astrology interviews from top-notch astrologers from around the world. So if you haven't heard the podcast before, or if you're not currently subscribed to it, please do give yourself a moment, hit down below, hit the like and subscribe button so that you can be a part of the momentum that we're building here at the True Divination podcast. Now, Alphee, my very first time meeting you was at UAC 2018, where the room was jam-packed. And
Yeah.
I sat down on the floor in the aisle, and I was completely blown away by your presentation. And I remember that year you were also having your Uranus return. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. We had about 4 or 5 people at that UAC. We had our Uranus return. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw you walking around with the sash, and it was just amazing to be able to be there and to learn from you. But Alphee, tell us a little bit about your history with astrology. And speaking to you today, I found out so much more because you've been practicing astrology since 1952.
Yeah.
I knew about the Horary part from 1962, but I didn't realize you've been practicing astrology since 1952. So Alfie,
Yeah.
please tell us about your history in astrology, how you got into astrology, and then what led you specifically down the path of Horary astrology.
Yeah. Well, I got into astrology like I told you. I got into a bad hockey accident where in those days we didn't wear plastic, it was leather. And a skate came and pulled my kneecap right out of my right leg. And I
Holy.
ended up in the hospital. And, they were going to cut my leg off. It got all swelled up and everything. And this nurse brought me a book, How to Cast Your Own Horoscope by Alan Leo. And I opened the book, and it was a math I didn't understand. I had graduated high school. I went playing hockey right after high school. And so she told me, oh, that's trig. I said, I don't know trig. I had algebra and geometry, but no trig. So she said, I'll bring you a doctor. He's going to show you how to do it. So the next day, a doctor came around. He showed me trig, and I cast my own chart.
Wow. And did that doctor know that he was teaching you trig for the purpose of you casting your own chart, or did he just think he was teaching you trigonometry?
Well, I guess he was looking at the book. It was helping me out, so he knew that it was astrology. And in those days, I didn't even know there was such a thing as table of houses and things like that. It was all done by trigonometry.
Wow. Wow. So,
Yeah.
so Alfie, after that first contact with astrology in 1952, where did you go from there, and how did your journey in astrology develop?
Well, I was in a hospital for about 6 months, then I came to Connecticut. I was born in Maine, actually, the northern part of Maine, right next to Canada. So, we played hockey all the time over
Hmm.
there, the
Hmm.
Canadians, because I was born on a farm, and our farm was maybe 2 miles away from Canada.
Ah.
So, and we had the St. John River over there, and so we played hockey. And in those days, I don't know about today, but the river would freeze up about like October. All right, and it would stay there till May. So we played hockey on the river all the time. And then I left and I came to Connecticut. And this is where I met a few people in Connecticut. They were into astrology, and they told me what books to buy and everything. And I ended up at UConn, got a degree in experimental engineering. And then I went to work as an experimental engineering
Mm.
for a while. And in 1965, I was working, and we had just did a project on nuclear engineering. I was working as a nuclear engineering, and so what happened? They were going to bring me back to the main plant, and I said no. I told my VP, "No, I'm quitting. I'm going to astrology." And at that point, he looks at me. He said, "Astrology is okay, you know." So the next day, I'm walking down in my office, and he says to me, "Lavoie, I need to talk to you." So I go over there, and he said, "You're going to astrology, right?" Yeah, and he said, I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you have a lot of money?" I said, "Not really." He said, "If you want to see a psychiatrist, we'll pay for it," because he thought I was going crazy, you know. And in 1965, I went into astrology full time, and and don't forget, at that time I had 5 kids,
Wow.
and I was a single parent. I had ended up with
Wow.
5 kids and a single parent, so it was hard to make a living, pay the mortgage and all that with kids. But I finally made it. In 1977, I opened my school,
Wow.
and
Alfie.
it's been I've been
Yeah.
there since then. And but I was lucky though. I tell you why I was lucky, Michael. I had, when I got into astrology, I had a couple of clients that were newscaster on TV. So they would say to me, "When you run out of client, tell us. We'll have it on the news, and we'll put your name in there at the bottom of your phone number." So that would bring me client.
Amazing. Wow.
Amazing, you know.
Alfie, now you kind of ran over the 60s, and I know that something very important happened in your life in the 60s in that you met Ivy Goldstein-Jacobson. And for those of you who don't know Ivy Goldstein-Jacobson, she wrote this book, Simplified Horary Astrology. And I pulled
Yeah.
mine out because I know that you, Alfie, you have yours on your desk as well. And she was really one of the pioneers of horary astrology in the 20th century.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, so tell us, Alfie, how is it you got to meet up with Ivy Jacobson, and what made you want to stick in horary astrology as a field?
Well, I met Ivy, like I said, in '62. And at that point, she got me interested in horror astrology. And, you know, I'm glad that I did. But back then, horror astrology was not. I mean, it was not like it is today. Today, everybody knows about horror. In those days, there you talk about astrologers, and you mention the word horror, and they look at you like it doesn't exist. And so, although that, if you take Doris Chase Don,
Mm-hmm.
she did some work. And, also, I'm trying to think of the guy that did the weather forecast here, and he had a horary too. And I had bought his book. It was published way back in the 30s, I believe, or in the
Mm-hmm.
40s.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Zen.
CC.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
And
CC.
oh, I love that guy. When we did our research in weather predicting, and we follow his rules and we created model, he was accurate with his method in predicting the weather by 97% of the time.
Wow.
So I love his work. I mean, I think his work is just immaculate. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I met Ivy, and then we had many chat on the phone with Ivy when I had questions and stuff like that, and she really helped me out. And then there was a couple of them. Sylvia Dillon
Mm-hmm.
was another one that was around that time, a little later, but around that time, and there was a couple of other ones too that was good.
But you still were in a field that wasn't really touched by other astrologers yet, and people still hadn't really known what horary astrology was, right?
Yeah, it's like I told you, Michael. Uh, when the NCGR came out and they started doing a workshop, convention,
Yeah.
and they would ask me to speak, and I would say, "I'm going to speak on horary." And they used to tell me, "No, I mean, you're going to waste your time because nobody knows on horary. So they had me speak on something else. And it took me a while to, be able to push my horary astrology.
So, Alfie, at what point did everything turn around in terms of the state of astrology in America and it opening up to a place where people were ready to hear about horary astrology?
Well, I think that it stayed quiet till Olivia Barclay, like I said, started doing the Lilies things, you know, the Lilies book. And she started teaching it. So in England, and then there was a few people like
Lee Lehman?
Lee got, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, she got in with her. And then Lee was on the board of the NCGR at that point. So she was able to bring the horary out more. And that was like in the 80s, early 80s, mid 80s.
Mm. So all of that time, you were still practicing your horary astrology. You
I
were
was
still
still
building.
practicing Orient astrology, and I was still trying to teach it and stuff like that. And yeah, so I did a lot of research, and you know, I did a lot of horary, and I got burned with a few things, you know, following even Ivy, you know, and then I came up with my own technique, saying, well, I'm just going to use this and going to use that, and you know, and I found out that you know things works really good. But one thing, Michael, back in the 70s, all right, I started meeting a lot of business people. And, you know, so I picked up about 20 businesses, you know, and some of them
Wow.
had offices in 10 countries, you know, all over the world. And you have to remember when you deal with businesses, all right, what do you use? You can't use their chart, you know, because it's a big thing. So the question with business is that should I open this office? Can I close the office in California and open the one in Las Vegas? You know, I'm bidding this job, and am I too high or too low? And I got to tell you a little story about that. And you know, we got plenty of time, right?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, we do.
Well, I was lecturing in Norwalk in Seattle. All right, and so my business client are the only one that's got my cell phone number. All right,
Uh,
so Sunday night we're at the bar, you know, after the thing is over, and one of my business client called, and this business client, what they do is they go out and they buy a property like a motel or a hotel that went out bankrupt. They tear it down, they rebuild it, they build a business, and then they sell it. All right, so they do that with shopping centers and all that. So I tell you know the people, the few astrologers that was lecturing here at the bar, I tell them, I said, "Oh, I got to go to work," and they said, "What are you going to do?" So I tell them, I said, "Can we go watch?" So 4 or 5 of them came into my room, and I put the computer on, and I'm on the phone with this guy, and I'm telling him, you know, he was bidding $25 million, and I told him that he could come down about 4 or 5 millions, and then I told him, okay, go to the bank at this days to at this time to get the loan, all right? And if you get the contract, sign it at this time, and then make sure that on this day at this time you can move your equipment in there. This is all election, you know, to start tearing it down. So after I'm all done, one of the astrologer, well-known astrologer, I'm not going to name his name, he looks at
mhm.
me and he said, "Don't you feel bad? You're telling this guy to spend $25 million. What if you're wrong?" I said, "I don't care. It's not my money." And then I explained to him, I said to him, if I was worried, all right, about the $25 million, then I would see something in the chart. Now, you know, I'd be, oh, I went on if I talk about this or talk about that. You know, you get up to a point, you know how to read the chart, you know what to get out of the chart, what you can't get out of the chart, and then you make your decision.
Wow, Alfie. I mean, that for most of us is a huge risk because we're talking about $25 million, right?
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, Alfie, because it doesn't just seem as if it's horary specifically that you're speaking about. I know that you mentioned a little bit of electional in there,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure what other methods that you used, but what do you think an astrologer needs to know in order to operate at that level?
Well, especially when you're dealing with businesses, you know, because the corporation, I have trouble with people say, well, we got incorporated at a certain time, a certain date and time. Well, I know how corporation did because I did a couple, and I have a lot of lawyers as my clients, and they used to tell me, you meet with somebody, you sign the paper for a corporation, the lawyer signs the thing, he brings it to his office, the secretary takes it and mail it to the state, and the state gets it, and the woman or the man start ripping the envelope. Oh, there's a corporation. She runs it into the clock. I mean, so it's not the time that the paper was signed. So I always tell people when I do electional work for signing paper for anything, or even like a corporation, the time that you sign the paper, you're incorporated because the lawyer has 30 days to put it in an estate. So
Mhm.
let's say that you're incorporated and 5 days later something happened. You're covered as a corporation because
Wow.
it was stamped by a lawyer, which he has the state stamp. At least in Connecticut, I'm told by my lawyers that that's the way it works.
And Alfie, where did you get this education? Did that come through trial and error on your part, or were you taught that specifically by a mentor?
No, I think that you learn astrology like you do and everything, and then the more you do chart, the more you get hurt. The more you wake up, you say, "I can't use that anymore. That stuff doesn't work," and I'm going to use this and that. So over the period of years, this is why now don't shoot me because of this
Go for
because
it. Go for it.
I hate people that has been studying astrology for 2 years and then start teaching it or start
Mhm,
doing. I mean, they got to start somewhere,
mhm.
but you need the experience in order to do something like that. You need,
Yeah.
you have to do a lot of chart and analyze the whole thing.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think, Alfie, what's important with what you're saying is that we have to be good at reading charts, period. It doesn't matter whether or not it's a horary chart or an electional chart or a natal chart. We as astrologers need to become good at reading charts point blank. And that only comes through years and years and years of practice and client
Yeah.
work.
And it's like the problem that I really don't like about astrology now, all right, is
Hmm.
that there's too many techniques. When I learned astrology back then, I studied with Charles Jane, and I used to travel to New York and studied with Charles Jane. I thought he was the best astrologer in the world.
Yeah.
And we use aspect, houses, and planets. Those are the three things that we use. If you knew that well, you could do anything.
Yeah.
It's not like this stuff over here that I mean, I saw a couple of years ago somebody did the election chart for marriage and put Venus and Libra on the first house and say, oh, Venus is exalted in Libra, and the first house, the time of the marriage will go forever. But it squares a Saturn in the 10th house and Mars in the fourth house. I'm saying, where the hell is this person coming from? I mean, who said that Venus is that strong in Libra? I have
Uh-huh.
Venus in Libra. It's no better than anything else. It's the aspect that it does and the houses that it's in. That's what gives my power to Venus.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's how you can measure the strength of a planet.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that you brought that up, Alfie, because what we find oftentimes, especially online, is that the astrology tends to be very one-dimensional. Here's this person with Venus in Taurus, oh how great. Or here's this person with Mars in Aries, but oh how great. And we're not actually looking at the action between planets that qualifies that Venus, because no one planet stands on its own. That planet is where it is in the zodiac, but it's also where it is in a house, and it's also the aspects that that planet receives from other things around it that either help it or hinder it. And
Yeah.
so today, what we find is that astrologers, well, a lot of astrologers have a tendency to talk about, oh, my Venus is in Libra, or my Mars is in this other sign. And we tend to speak about placement, but we don't tend to speak about the action and the
Right.
interactions.
How it ties with the rest of the chart.
Precisely.
And that's important. But I got to tell you this story. Uh, they asked me to do a workshop in Denver. way back. I've done lectures all over the world. I mean, I've lectured at every major conference all over the world, and I've lectured to all groups all over the United States and Canada. So anyway, they said to me, but you got to do something Thursday night so that, and then they come and listen to you, then we'll have more people in the lecture on Saturday. All right. So they said, what do you want to lecture about? I want to lecture about houses. So the woman says, okay. Then I get an email from them and they say, no, Alphee, you can't lecture on houses. Everybody knows about houses. I said, they don't. I mean, because what I do is I call a ring around the roses. I tie all the houses together and how they talk to one another and how they relate spiritually, emotionally, physically, So finally, I said to them, I'll make a deal with you. You're paying me so much to do the lecture on Saturday. I'll tell you, all right? If give me a percentage. And if you don't have anybody on Saturday, then, you won't lose money. So I went there on Thursday night, lecture about the houses. On Saturday workshop, they said they had triple of what they used to have. And when we went out to eat, we had to go out to eat. This little old lady, and I hate to say that because I'm old myself, but she was about like 85, and she said to me, drive with me, okay, so to go to the restaurant. So I sit down with her and in her car, and she said to me, well, Alphee, I've been an astrologer forever, and if I'd known the houses like you taught him today, I would have been a 10 times better astrologer. Right? So, you need to know the houses. And I have a certified horary class, which I have tons, over 70 people in it.
Wow.
And what I found, and we started that last August, I believe. And finally, I told my wife, Carol, I says, Carol, somehow or other, I will never sink horror into their head because they don't know houses. So in the last month, I spent time writing about houses, doing workshop, lecture about houses, video and all that. And now finally, I had some houses, and now, they send me the tests about houses. Finally, all right, they're making 70s and 80s and 90s, A's and B's, And
Yeah.
before, out of maybe 25 questions, they had 3 right.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
because Mychal, do you know any books right now, lately books that will tear the houses down and explain exactly what the houses are? I don't know of any.
I mean, there are books out there, and there are good books that do historical research about the houses. And I know Deb Holding has a book, Temples in the Sky, and it's a really good book. But I am sure that how you approach it, Alfie, based on your years of experience, your over 50 years as an astrologer, is quite distinct and quite profound.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I said, I don't use all the stuff that the old people use because I know people get insulted when the Lily astrologer. I says to them, look, fella, I did more horary in 1 year than Lily did in his lifetime, and I've been doing it for over 60 years. I mean, they get all insulted. And it's true because right now my horary practice is from all over the world. I mean, because of email and telephone and internet and all that. I mean, you
Mhm.
don't know where these things come from. They come
Right.
from everywhere.
Right. Given all of these points of connection that people have today that makes it that much more easily accessible for them to contact you, at what point do you consider a horary valid or invalid? Because I mean, people today, they don't even think about anything anymore. They just, the first thing that comes into their mind, they shoot an email or they shoot a message on Facebook, and they expect for that to be a horary moment. Do you consider that to still be a valid horary?
No, no. The old astrologer says, oh, take the time you read the letter. If somebody sent me an email, all right, or is on the answering machine and said, oh, I thought of the question at this time, the first thing I do, I'll write them an email, say, call me. Because when they talk to me, all right, and this is what I insist on my student, got to ask questions, because you got to know exactly what they want, because sometimes they ask some stupid question. You can't answer it, but you say, is this what you want to know? We'll look at it this way. We'll tell you this and that and this. Oh yeah, this is exactly, because that way there. And then when you're finished talking to them, I always say to my client, okay, ask me the question now. Not the question you wanted to know at the beginning, the question that we just discussed. You want to know this, this, and that. So they ask me the question, can you tell me this, this, and this, and that? Then I look at my watch, take the time, and that's the horary. I'll tell you another example. I used to work with missing kids, especially with an outfit in Florida. The first 4 that I did, I was always wrong. So the guy at the bureau, the police bureau, says to me, "Well, we can't waste our time but I had connection because the mother was connected with me in astrology. So I told her, I says, look, I get a lot of things to my dreams. So one morning I get up and I get this dream, Alphee, it's not working in astrology because you're taking the person that asked you a question, where is Judy? A kid that's got kidnapped, and where is she? Well, I was told in my dream, get the 911 time and where it was called. So I started working with that. I swear, Mychal, it works 100%.
Wow.
I've located so many kids now.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because when they call me, and they know now that I need the 911 time. And who made the call? Is it the father, the mother, the grandmother, or who made the call? And then you associate the chart with that.
Mm-hmm. And Alphee, that would specifically be an event chart, not a horary chart.
Right. That would be an event chart, not a horary chart. Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, the event chart, Mychal, the hardest thing as a horary astrologer, do horary for yourself. All right, because you're having breakfast and you're saying, "Gee, I'd like to know this," right? But you're not at your computer, and you don't look at your watch. And half hour later, you go on the computer and ask the question. Well, the time is not right.
Precisely. So it's that moment, it's that exact moment when that question comes in your mind that constitutes the horary moment.
That's a horary moment. Yeah. I have these clients, that needs to know something right away. And by the way, in astrology, Mychal, the only way you can make a living is people coming back. All right? Yeah. Because if you expect new clients, you can't make a living. And this is why I'm sorry I push you back so many times you call me, because I'm booked up a year in advance with my client. So if I have an off day, then I got to work double time to catch up, because when people come for a year update, they make an appointment for the next year at that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Alphee, I'm very happy that you told me that, because I had started to feel very sad for a while. I was like, Alphee keeps pushing me away. But I completely understand. I completely get it. And you're a brilliant astrologer, and it's only understandable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now, Alphee, a point that I know that you have made several times is that if you have the event chart, you would rather take the event chart than the horary chart. So I think what's important right now is for you to distinguish and define what is horary astrology, and then what is the interpretation of an event chart.
Yeah. First, you answered them the same way. But, an event chart is where something happened, and people say, I had a car accident, and I look at my watch and it was a certain thing. All right. How will it turn out? Or somebody called me and say, especially my business client will call me and say, Alphee, I bid at a job, and now they tell me I'm too high, and I don't know if I should take the thing down. then they know, my business client, that when that call comes in and they hang up, they take the time, and I trust them. They take that time when the call came in. And so I look at what was going on with the person they're talking to on the phone, but I also look at the horary question. I take the time when they call me, and then we can make a decision. Should you proceed there, just forget it, because you're not going to get the contract,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know?
And whereas a horary question is they ask you the question, you take down the time at the moment that you understand the question. The event chart is, say the call comes in, or in the case of a marriage, the couples, they both say I do and they kiss. I mean, these are the event moments that you look at.
Yeah, the events moment, of course, is like you said before, the 911 call. When somebody called, there was an event there. They didn't ask the astrologer, but they asked the police and they asked the universe, saying, what happened to my granddaughter? She disappeared, and, nobody saw her for about 12 hours right now.
Hmm.
Where is she?
Hmm. So, do you think that in our horary practice, a lot of times we're looking at the wrong chart? We're looking at a horary when we should be looking at an event chart?
No, I think the horror is always good, as long as the person calls you and you add the discussion exactly what they want to know. And then when you hang up the phone, I keep telling my student, when you hang up the phone, you got in your head what houses you're going to use and how you're going to do it. Because if let's say, oh God, I forgot to ask him that. Now, if you call them and they call back, it's a total different time. The
Hmm.
time is so important in horror.
Hmm. Now, Alfie, another thing that I wanted to ask was that you were around at this point when Olivia Barclay did her work in bringing back William Lilly's astrology. How did that book, Christian Astrology, impact your own practice? And did it even impact your practice when it came out?
No, it didn't impact my practice at all. All right. Not that I thought that this thing was wrong or not, but what turns me off this thing, somebody had sent me a photograph, 2 pages in some book. I think it was a Christian astrology,
Hmm.
where supposedly the question was asked, what will happen to my daughter? And Lily says, in this question here, I'm going to use the moon to answer the thing. It wasn't even the rule of the fifth house. And
Wow.
then, a few chapter later, the same question was asked, and he says, in this question, I'm going to use Venus. And it wasn't even the rule of the fifth house. That turned me right off. I said, that's it. I don't want to know anymore. I didn't study it. I didn't read it,
Yeah.
and I trust Ivy.
Yeah. 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 I think this brings up an important point in terms of us realizing that the things that occurred in the past, while they do serve as our astrological past, we still have to look at ways of bringing our astrology into the future. And I think that oftentimes we get stuck on tradition, when in fact, even in a book like Christian Astrology, William Lilly made mistakes. And
Yeah.
he showed that he made those mistakes. And so we, as 21st century astrologers, have to find a way to look at the astrology that we practice and bring it forward into the future, as opposed to staying stuck on techniques that probably don't work in the same way that they worked for our ancient forebears.
Yeah. You got to get out of the horse and buggy and get into a jet plane. That's where we are today. But I'll give you an example. All right.
Yeah.
The old astrologer would say, if the ascendant in the horary chart is less than 3 degrees or over 27 degrees, you can't answer a chart. Now, you know why, don't you? Because at that time they were looking at a sundial, and the
Right.
sundial was 15 minutes away. So
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes is 3 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And today we can calculate the chart exactly. I mean, with
Mm-hmm.
the watch that we have connected with the satellite,
Mm-hmm.
everybody uses same time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I do pay attention if the rising sign is, let's say, 1 degree. that means that would tell us that it might take longer for the horary to give you, because there's not enough material that came out. It's just the beginning, and it didn't really develop as much. So to give an answer, and if it's 29 degrees, could be too late. Or maybe you have to pay attention that you may be too late to get an answer or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Today, we have the ability to calculate charts to within 2 seconds of arc. Like, we can calculate that ascendant to within 2 seconds of arc. And so
Yes.
we have this ability that they didn't have back in the day when they were using sundials. And you're absolutely correct. If that ascendant is less than 3 degrees or over 27 degrees, we stand the risk of not knowing exactly which sign was rising at that moment. And I think that that's a very important point that you make, because today we still see people using this rule of, if the ascendant is less than 3 degrees, then the chart is unreadable.
Yeah.
But I've heard you say several times that every chart is readable and that every chart should be
Every
read.
chart is readable. Even, just think, a lot of astrologers way back then, when Lily first came out, they'd say, you can't read a vorticourse moon. But let's see that a client calls you and he pays you $250 for a horary chart, and it takes you 10 minutes, 12 minutes to give him an answer, right? And he calls and you say, well, I can't give you an answer, Joe. The moon is vorticourse. He calls back 2 days later. I can't give you an answer. The moon is vorticourse. How many times is he going to call you?
Right.
You know?
Right. Now, Alfie, so in terms of the classical rules, are there any of the classical rules that underpin horary astrology that you do still hold within your practice?
I don't really know, because
Right.
I never really pay much attention to the classical rule,
Mm-hmm.
because, I pay attention to Ivy, Sylvia Delon. Then there's another one too that I like.
Who else? Who else could there be? There was a Geraldine, something lady.
Yeah, Geraldine Davis.
Yes. Okay.
That's the one.
So right, there's Geraldine Davis. Yeah, and she wrote a red book, I think, on horary astrology, if memory
Yeah.
serves correct. Yeah.
And they pretty well do the same thing. I know that on Facebook. All right. I mean, I love Facebook because they put a horary chart there, and 50 people will write on it, and nobody uses the same houses. So it's the 12, it's the 10, it's the this and that. You know, you sort of have to laugh a little bit. Uh, and there was one over there that was talking about taxes, all right, or compensation,
Hmm.
like stuff like that. And they were using the 11th house, because the government is the thing, and the 11th house is the money. And I wrote back and I said, you know, I mean, when you get to be 65 and you get whatever you want to call it, all right, it doesn't come from the 11th house. It's not money for the government. It's your own money. It's everybody's money, the 7th house money, and you're
Right.
collecting the 8th house money. And
Uh-huh.
but he said, well, that's what Lily used. He used the 11th house. Well, they didn't have Social Security then. You know?
Right. Oi, and even without having or knowing anything about modern astrology, I think that it's just been universally accepted that your taxes come from the eighth house, that debt, other people's money that is owed,
Right.
like all of that comes from the eighth house. So I think there really needs to be a streamlining in terms of how we approach astrology, so that at the very minimum, we're all operating from the same basic, fundamental understanding of at least the houses, which house to use for which issues.
Yeah, it's just like, there was a lot a month ago on love affair. Is it the fifth house or the seventh house? And everybody says, well, Lily says that love affair is the seventh house. I say he's wrong. Dating, dating, when you're dating, it's for fun. It's not serious, you know. I mean, because you're dating, you take your date out for fun. When you're married, you take your date out. It's not fun anymore. You know what I mean? It's an obligation.
And even the Vedic astrologers, because I studied Vedic astrology for a while as well. Even the Vedic astrologer says that the fifth house is the house of romance, and that's where we
Yeah.
go to for courtship and for romantic love. Whereas the seventh house is the house of legal love. That's where we go to for marriage. So I do believe that this fundamental base understanding really needs to be established better for a lot of people, because when we don't know the ABCs of astrology, then we can find anything we're looking for from anywhere. And this reminds me of a quote by Joan Quigley. The interviewer said to Joan, how is it that if you give four astrologers a chart, then they'll all come up with four different answers?
Yeah.
And she said, because three of them are completely wrong. And, and so it's this thing where, if you know what to do and you know what you're looking for, then there isn't a way for us to really deviate from coming to the same conclusion if we all have the same basic education in astrology.
Yeah. And when I teach horary, I called it learning to learn to talk horary. When I was a kid, I don't know if they don't do that anymore, but when I was in high school, girl would take shorthand. They would learn how to do something in shorthand. And the only reason that I teach them to talk astrology, because I read an article one time in a magazine. The question was, a girl asked, will my boyfriend marry me? All right, marry me. And so the horror astrologer used the first house, which is right, the Corin, and she used for the Quisitor, she used the seventh house. And it was said yes. And the writer said, well, but they never married because Saturn was in the third house and she changed her mind. But if you say if the question is asked something like that, Mychal, will my boyfriend marry me? It's not her decision; it's the decision of the boyfriend. So you have to take the 11th house. My boyfriend marry the 11th and the first. And when you look at the 7 and the first, it said no.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, so this is what you have to turn. Will my boyfriend marry me? My boyfriend, fifth, marry me. His marriage, 11th house, me, the first house.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
talking, and you can say that with, will my son, mother-in-law, go to the hospital? You do the same thing. You talk son, fifth house, mother-in-law. You take his wife, which is 7, and come back to that, and then the hospital is 12th house. Count 12th house. So you learn to talk astrology. It's easy to define the houses.
Mm-hmm. Alfie, I think that the current form that a lot of horary astrology is taking within the world today is people respond to horary questions in an email. But
Hmm.
I know that when you meet clients, there isn't an email. You're there, you're reading the chart on the spot. What do you think that has done for you to do astrology real time on the spot with clients?
Well, it doesn't matter, Mychal, if you send it to on an email or you do it personally. But it matters that that the time of the horror didn't come from an email. It came from the person calling you and you asking questions back and forth, and then decide this is what the person wants to know. This is the houses I'm going to use. Then you can send it in an email. That's fine. Sometimes I do that when I'm real busy. Somebody will call me, a business client, and say, I mean, yeah, I haven't got paid for my job. They pay me every month, but I haven't had it for about 6 weeks. What should I do? All right. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll say to them, okay, let me look at the time. It's 3:24. I'll send you an email in the next couple of hours, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But you got the time, the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why, again, when you look on Facebook, and I don't put, I won't answer any question there because, these questions there, you don't know if it's the right time because somebody said, well, I have trouble with my boss and should I quit my job? Well, I mean, so they put a time there. Was it the time when the boss told her to get lost and then look at her clock and says, you don't know if the time is right. So I don't put anything on that.
Alfie, Facebook has become to a large degree the horary marketplace.
Yeah.
And that's where people go to get their horries answered.
Well, the only reason that I don't like it is because people ask their own question, and is the timing right? That's the thing that bothers me. I mean, if they say to me, I just had a client that called me and he wants to know this, and I took the time and it was 3:25, I would help him out
Right.
because I would know that's a real question. But when they ask for themselves, yeah, where did they pick the time?
So, Alfie, what do you think we can do as astrologers in the 21st century who do use Facebook? Because let's face it, Facebook has been an amazing tool. Social media has been an amazing tool for us
Yeah.
to connect with other people around the world who also practice horary astrology and astrology in general. What do you think we can do as a community in order to make our interaction with horary astrology on Facebook better?
Well, I think that if you had a Facebook thing that you would really be disciplined on the time, you could help people. But, most of them are not. That's the problem. And of course, Mychal, back in 202, 202, I started a research group.
Hmm.
And we call ourselves the Gators. All right, it's called the Alphee's Gators Research Group, and we meet every Tuesday night, and we have Gators all over the world, and we do research. And I tell you, I found things in research that things about, like, for instance, the eclipse. All right, I've been in astrologers, like I said, since the 50s, and I've lectured at major conferences. I've lectured at all UAC except the first one, the NCGR conference, and the list goes on. I lectured in Switzerland, Russia, England, name it. I've been all over Australia, and you know I mean, the whole thing is that, you're there and you say, oh, somebody's talking about eclipse. All right, and so you go sitting in there and you come home and you use their technique. It doesn't work at all. And what I found by doing the marriage research, the death research, and the accident research, how important an eclipse are, because I found that 94% of the time, all right, an eclipse tell you when you're going to get married. When in 6 months, and the new moon's going to tell you the month you're going to get married.
Wow.
I mean, this is something that we've done research, and we did it against control group, and we did it again. We do real scientific research because Franco, who is the director, I made the director of he's an engineer. I was an engineer, and the program was written by Sergey, my business partner, a Russian partner, and he's got a PhD in nuclear. So I mean, and then all the rules that we use in our research we had meeting with three different professors that teach at different college, Utah and Louisville and stuff like that, and we came out with the rules how we're going to use a control group and how we're going to use that. So the software we use is really scientific,
Hmm.
really.
Hmm. Alfie, I'm really happy that you took us in the direction of the software that you use because I know that you created your own astrology software. Can you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Well, we have different software, and many times, sometimes software can really help you become a good astrologer, right? In other words, like, did you ever try to do an election chart with a regular software? Regular software, it's impossible. How
Yeah.
about our Father Time, where you can say, okay, I want to get married, all right? And you say, I want to get married only on Saturday and Sunday from May till this. And this goes through a whole artificial intelligence and find days and time to get married. You look at the chart, and within 10 minutes, I can come up with a better time, and I'll give you a whole day with a regular astrology program. You
Wow.
know, And this is what we came out with. And but because we've done research, I remember back in 1980, some guy came from Wall Street to meet me in my school, and he wanted to hire me to predict the market. All right. And I said, I never did anything with the market. He says, Alfie, if you can give me a system that's accurate by 51%, we both can get rich. And I'm saying 51%. I mean, and so we start doing research. I start doing research. And our software right now, the market trader software, the Millennium, the Titanium. 3 years in a row, we won the award for the best forecasting in Stock and Commodities magazine, which is not an astrology magazine.
Wow.
And right now, what I'm doing is I've taken all that research, and we're doing a thing called the Alphee trading system, and we're putting it all in there. And it's going to be by the fall we'll have it ready. And people that like I have a person in Australia, a person in Israel that's testing it for me. They say, Alphee, we're making tons of money with this software.
Wow,
So
Alfie.
research is the only way to be.
That's really incredible, Alfie. And tell us about where we can purchase your software for those astrologers out there who really do want to get into the sorts of financial astrology and trading astrology that you do. Where can we purchase the software from you?
Yeah, it's I have a website, and it's Alphee, www.alphee.com.
Okay.
And then we have a website for our where we have all our research, and it's called the www.astroinvestigators.com.
Okay.
Astro Investigators, and we have all kinds of research in there. We keep adding stuff on there, and that's very, very good.
Great.
But I'll show you one thing.
Yes, please. And I'm going to put the two websites down in the description box below for anyone who wants to go and find out more about the work that Alfie is doing. Okay, Alfie, so I think that it's about time for us to take a look at your software in action, and also for you to guide us through a few horary charts. Shall we?
Yeah, I'm going to do a little thing here just for the fun of it.
Great.
Let's see, this is a horary chart, right? And it's a horary chart. For instance, somebody lost their wallet. All right? And let's say this is the horary chart. And of course, any movable possession is the second house, right? So Pluto would rule the wallet. And so the next thing you would do is that I use 5 significators for loss article. I use the ruler of the second house, the moon, the natural ruler Venus of the second house, the pot of fortune, and the ruler of the pot of fortune. Okay, so if more of them are in angles, that means that the wallet is in the home. If it's in the succeeding house, it's close to home, maybe around the yard or in the garage or stuff like that. And if it's in cadent houses, that means that it's far away. All right. And so now I look at it and I see Pluto is the natural ruler of the second house, and Pluto is in the second house. So I would say, that it's okay. All right. It's probably in the home. And one thing that I do is when I talk to my client, I explain. I look at Pluto, and Pluto is in Capricorns close to the floor. All right. It's in the basement, or it's in the corner. All right. Then I look at Venus, and Venus is retrograded, which means that it's behind something, into something. It's going to be hard. It's not, at plain view. I look at the pot of fortune, and the pot of fortune is in Scorpio. Again, it could be in the basement. It could be, in the bathroom, things like that. Right. It's hiding somewhere. And then the moon is in Cancer, which again, there's a lot of water, as you can see. So it could be in water. Always means low to the ground, all right, below the ground. So it could be the basement or the kitchen where there's water, and in the bathroom. Right. And then I always look at the last aspect of the moon conjunct, and that was Mercury, right? Because if you go back, it's Mercury. You find the ruler of Mercury, and Mercury rules the 12th house and also rules the ninth house. And if it rules the 12th house, it says that the 12th house is always the closet or in clothes or hidden somewhere. So it means that, it could be there. And, many times when you look at the last moon aspect, you look at the house that it's in, the house that rules, and it tells you who had it last. But remember, I always tell people, because this is not a real chart to find lost article, it's not speaking to me.
Right.
Right? If it was somebody that called me, it would be exactly in the chart be speaking to me.
Right.
And sometimes when you do something like that, it's hard to do. But one
Mm-hmm.
thing that I found, and you got my book, Lose This Book,
Yes.
Rob Hain calls that the Bible of a lost article. My Lose This Book, because I started using local space.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at a local space, local chart right here, all right, and I look at it and I can make it bigger so we can all see it right now for now.
Yeah.
Okay. And remember that Pluto is the ruler of the lost article. And
Mm-hmm.
Pluto is actually north, more north at west, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people, I tell my client, okay, when I call them back, I explain the situation that it could be in. It's well hidden. It's close to the floor. It's in the closet in a dark corner. That's Capricorn. And I go through the whole thing. And I say, okay, put yourself in the middle of the house and face east. And they say, where's east? Well, do you know where the sun rises in your chart in your house? Oh, yeah. Okay, so, okay, face east. Turn counterclockwise 90 plus another 10. You can see right here. All right.
Mm-hmm.
122. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, turn counterclockwise, not about 110 degrees. Now, if you walk towards the wall, where would it take you? They say, oh, it takes me in the kitchen, it takes me in the bedroom, it takes me here and there. I said, okay, that's good. All right. Now walk in there, and the Pluto is an Earth sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Earth sign is means that it's south wall. So I say, look on the south wall, because Venus is retrograde. Make sure that you move things, you do things around, and in Gemini, it rules a closet, a desk or something like that. But you're going to have to maybe pull drawers out or move things in order to find it. But
Oh.
like I said, it's funny because when you do example of a chart like something like that, it doesn't speak to you. I'm trying to think what we had here the other day with the Gators, and we're trying to make up a chart, and to work, and we couldn't get an answer. And this guy said, "Oh, I got a chart like that." He puts it on the screen, and we got the answer right away because it was a real chart.
Right. Uh,
Remember that in horror we only lose apply an aspect. All
right.
right. And so the way that you do it, let's say this was a marriage chart, then you would actually, let's say the person said, will my boyfriend marry me? All
Mm-hmm.
right. The boyfriend is Aquarius. His marriage, which means marrying her, would be Leo, and it would be the corn would be Venus. All right. So you look at Venus, and actually it's past a degree to the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Venus rules move faster, so there's no conjunction between the Sun and Venus. And then what I do is that I swap the Moon for the first ruler, which would be Venus, and I look at the aspect to the Sun. There's no aspect. I swap the Moon for the Sun. I look at Venus. There's no aspect. So that means that would be really a no at this point, all right? Because the Moon becomes either ruler. All right. And
Mm-hmm.
then you would look at the last aspect of the moon, which will, tell you more. And when we look at this, the last aspect of the moon would probably be, before we go voice of course, would probably be in opposition to Jupiter. So again, everything says that no. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about this is people sometimes they say, well, I don't know what the last aspect of the moon is. Well, with our software, I can click on this and I can take the moon and I can advance it. And when it goes to the next sign, oh, it just went to the next sign
Mm-hmm.
right there. All right. Then I look at it and it just went to the next sign. And there's the moon here. What's the highest planet? It's still Jupiter.
Right.
All right. So sometimes you think that it's going to make a trine to the sun, but by the time the moon moves out of sign, the sun would also move. So with this software, you can do this. And you know, this software here was designed for an astrologer. All right. Let's see, this is my chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing a year update. Okay. And I want to look at the aspect, for instance. Okay, I can go here and I can click on. Let's see, solar arc. All right. Oh, wrong one. I can click on solar arc right here. It gives me the solar arc. And I look at this and I'm saying that the Jupiter will oppose uh, 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 the Pluto, all right, down the road somewhere. I double click on it, it tells me when it's going to happen. All right,
Wow.
so it's going to happen 10/17. Okay, let's say that I'm in transit. I'm talking to somebody, right? And right here, I'll go to transit. I'm talking to somebody, and I'm saying, "Gee, you know, Saturn just moved into your ninth house, so now you're really coming out to accumulation in your life and your career. And if you have to make something big in this life, remember Grant Louis? That was the best book to me in my thing." You
Yep.
know, I mean, astrology for the million.
Yep.
He talks about the Saturn aspect. So I say, okay, let's see now when Saturn is going to hit your midheaven. You take Saturn, you move it right on the midheaven, and it tells me that March 25th, 2022, Saturn will be on your midheaven. And I'm saying to them, you know, another important time in your life that you know you have to be careful. That's when you came out of the withdrawal because Saturn was at the bottom of the chart. It hit the unveiling of the statue of this personality that you did for the last 14 years. And so we want to go back on this and we want to think what was going on in your life, because what was going on in your life, what you thought that people accept you as, and you know, is very important because Saturn is going to hit your midheaven and you want to know then. So you click on it and you say, okay, in September 30th or in 2017, Saturn was in there. What was going on in your life? So you can do all kinds of stuff like that. I mean, you know, you can move things around. And let's see that this is transit here. And I say Mercury. Let's look at Mercury here. When does Mercury turn to retrograde? I turn right here and it says it's going to turn retrograde 6/18/2020. So
Wow.
it's a software that you get answers like this.
Right.
And when you're dealing with clients, you got to give them answers. Because if you give them answers, they keep coming back every year. They can't wait, you know, to get another reading, the year update, you know. So our software is that thing that it does everything. Let's see that somebody calls me and say, you know, uh, I want to start writing a book. And you could do election, but you could do this here. You could go into dynamic astrology, black box, and you know, and open this up here, the little thing right here,
Mm-hmm.
and I can go up there and I say the third house, communication, writing, and I'll put you know, the date today, and I'll go into September. I'll go to the end of the year. All right,
Yeah.
30, and I'll go up there and I'll say calculate. It's going to tell me when my third house, it takes rulers of the third house and it takes, it looks at everything. Okay. I can open it up here and we can see the whole thing. As you can see at the date at the bottom, it tells me that 7/26. Now, if I want to, I can go back now and I can, you know, just make a lazy curve
Mm-hmm.
instead like this
Mm-hmm.
and I'll see better. But when I want to zero into the days, I use no smooth factor. But if I use a smooth factor, this is what I get. So you don't want to start writing a book here. All
Mm-hmm.
right, because this is the normal thing right here. This is would be the normal, and anything above normal, all right here and here. So from here, which starting right from here, which is 725, all the way to 919, you should have that outline of the book. You should start writing it, and then from there, I will start doing an electional chart because I know that if I can find a good electional chart within this, not over here a little bit, but within this point and that point and that point and this point, if I can find electional, that's the time to start writing the book. So
That
you can
is
do anything
amazing.
with career. You can do anything. There's thousands of things, and it goes on and on and on. And this thing here has the best rectification software right in here, because I won't do a client unless I rectify their chart.
Wow,
You know,
Alfie.
yeah.
This software is absolutely incredible, Alfie. And
Well, the only thing I say, Mychal, is that it was designed around my business. And boy, people that knows me and are my client, they know that I work 12 hours a day. I'm booked up every day solid.
tell
You
me,
give him answers.
Alfie, this is really amazing, especially this wave that allows us to see high periods in terms of our any house that we have in mind, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
You can do career, you can do anything.
and I can see how this would be completely valuable to people who do electional astrology when someone comes in and they want to pick the best date to open their business or pick the best date to be married. I've never seen anything quite like it.
I want to show you this. Maybe I shouldn't. But look at me. Look at me in June. I hope I'm still alive when the end of June comes. I've been looking at June 2020 for about like 5 years right now. And if I can pass June, look, the sun from here to here is afflicted by aspect. All right. The moon is not bad. It only gets started get afflicted at the end of June right here. And the only good day in June is right here, around here and here. But look at this over here. I got a bad Pluto, a bad Uranus, a bad Jupiter, bad Venus, bad moon, and a bad sun all at the same time.
Wow.
Now, where would you see that in any other chart? And one thing that I love too, this you're going to appreciate. Some people, I think it's over their head till they start using it. But I'm going to show you right here. I'm going to go to time tunnel and I'm going to calculate it. And I'm going to make the line thicker. And I'm going to take the moon, this, and this out. And I'm going to bring us to the fourth harmonic. All right. So the fourth harmonic means that every time this is a transiting planet, it could be a solar arc, but it's a transiting planet. Look at this. Saturn. We see Saturn is black. Jupiter is blue right here, right? You see Saturn is going to come and square my Uranus. All right. You click here, and there it is. All right. You can advance it a day at a time to see what other aspects are going on at the same time. Then it's going to come and square my Jupiter. And then it's going to hit in opposition to my Pluto right here, all right, when I do it here. And I can see that. And you can see the aspect that's going on at the same time. There, it's going to start August 31st, and it's going to make a station all the way to here, all the way to 1024. See, you would never see a station, but you see it here,
Hmm.
all right? Because you can see that the transit it goes up, it turns retrograde here, start going backward. All right, and you can see station, and sometimes you can see if you look at Trump's chart. President Trump, he's got three bad stations starting into June about 16, and really bad station, and long station too, because they're Neptune. And then if I put the six harmonic, then that gives me the trine and the sextile, right?
Right.
So I can see what's going on. There's Jupiter's going to hit my thing, Pluto. Then it turns back and hit Pluto again, and then it comes and hit my moon, the node, the sun, and then it goes back here again. See, you can see that. You would never see that. I can see a client A whole year right there, what I call potholes in good aspect at one point.
I've never seen anything like this, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one. The only thing similar to this that I can think of is the graphic ephemeris
Right.
that came out of the cosmobiology school, but even that isn't laid out in the same fashion. But here with this, it's really so plain to see when that planet is going to interact with the line of another planet and when it's going to come back around, and then you can click on the option and see what date that happens. That's really, really incredible.
Yeah, you can see that where it comes around, makes it goes, the retrograde comes back and hit it again. So you remind them, look, this is going to be the retrograde hit. So that one there is going to be more important than the first one. If you don't know what's going on in the first house, in the first one, you might have trouble when it hits the second one.
Hmm.
Because the things, is on the retrograde and now it goes out of whack. And if you knew what was going on in the first one, then you pay attention to it, then the retrograde one won't be as bad.
And this is what you use for all the branches of astrology you do, whether it's your financial astrology or your horary or your electional.
Well, this is the main program. We got 23 programs.
Okay. Well, Alfie, we're gonna have to have you come back on the show to talk to us some more about the other wonderful things that you've created, because just this alone and the fact that you can go onto that moon, like you went onto the moon and you dragged the moon around the chart to see when the moon makes its final aspect. Like
Hmm.
I don't really think that there's a traditional astrology program that allows you to go in and move the chart factors in that way. And it's really beautiful,
No,
actually.
you can move everything here. You can move the ascendant. You can move anything. This piece of software, it does thousands of things here, It's got a fast selection. Let's say somebody wants to do something in the next couple of days. You just go up and put your houses. Let's say he wants to make a phone call. You do the third house, all right, and you start and you say automatic, and then you say okay, go, and you can go out and have a coffee, and it's going to keep. See, it's negative, negative. If it's a positive, it's going to put it up on the first one, and then the better chart will be on top. So when you stop it, you can see when to make the phone call.
Alfie, this does everything. This
Yeah.
does everything. And for me, I'd be sitting down, going through chart after chart and grabbing my ephemeris and seeing what planet makes what aspect with that between the first and the third. And I just be, spending hours with an ephemeris. But this takes care of that.
Send me your email.
Will do.
Yeah.
I most definitely will, Alfie. I most definitely will. Now, Alfie, another question that I want to ask you is that I see that you've been using Placidus for everything thus far. Is Placidus your house system of preference for all the types of astrology that you practice?
Yes, yes. Well, Michael, you have to remember back in the '60s when you did chart, there was only one table of houses, and that was Placidus. And someday I want to do a real research, about houses, like when people get, because the only thing that changes in the different house system, the angles are the same. All right. The only thing that changes in the inner house system. All right. So surgery, if we take surgery, for instance, and we have maybe 700 chart of people that had surgery, and then take that Placidus chart and then see how many hit the eighth house, then do the coke. If you do coke, how many hits the coke house, the components. And that's a research that I want to do someday to see what's going on. I did one time on death. I couldn't find the difference between coke and Placidus. I could find the difference between components, but coke and Placidus were pretty well equal.
a friend of mine who's also a Horary astrologer, Anthony Lewis, who wrote the book Horary Astrology Plain and Simple, he also recently said to me that the Placidus cusps act as sensitive points sometimes, especially in terms of some of the solar return work that he does, that he's found that the Placidus house cusps, they're really sensitive. Do you find the same thing in terms of the house cusps in Placidus?
Hmm. Yeah. I like Placidus. I use Placidus. I've been using it in all my techniques. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, we have another horror book that's being published now.
Tell us about it.
Uh, well, it's like the horror at its best, although I'd give more explanation in it, you know. And I took a lot of chart that people loved when I wrote the monthly column in Dell magazine. I did for 22 years. I did a monthly column there, and I took some of the best chart in there that people would write to me from looking at the Dell horoscope and say, "Oh, I love this chart, Alphee. It explains everything." I took about, I don't know, 100 chart and we put it into this book.
Wow. And so do you feel as if this book that you're coming out with, this is your magnum opus? This is your crowning glory?
Well, I guess they're all good. I think my founding glory, Mychal, is when I put my head together and I write a book. I'm going to call it This and That in Astrology. And it's going to be a lot of my techniques that nobody knows. I don't even lecture on it. I hate to say this, but when I used to find a technique that works in astrology, right? I used to be a lecturer on it. Then I go to the next conference and somebody's lecturing on it and said they discovered it, you know. So now I got about six things that I can't wait to put it into a book. One is my what I call diurnal moon techniques, that I can pick event right off the map. I can say this is going to happen in Dallas, Texas next month, or this day. And you can see the wars, you can see the 911, you can see everything with the technique right on the map.
Alfie, you are an absolute magician, and I and I want to learn that technique.
Yeah, that's tech. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I won't lecture until I write the book.
Completely understood. And
Yeah.
I know that you had said once that there was a lot of the work from, I think was it Charles Jane?
Uh-huh.
And I know that you had mentioned once that there was a lot of the work from Charles Jane that you wanted to revive because a lot of his work, people still don't fully know about it. And wasn't he the one who brought into popular use the concept of the vertex?
Yeah. Well,
Right.
Charles Jane, to me, he was the best astrologer I ever met. He was born, I believe, he was older than me, and he was uh, a day after me, October 8, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Libra. And, we used to love to eat donuts together.
And you learned a lot from him as well. He was one of the pillars of your teaching, of
Yeah,
your
he to
education.
me outside of Ivy, Ivy I learned all the horary, but Charles Jane I learned how to read a chart, how to rectify a chart, how to do mundane and all that. That comes out of Charles Jane.
Alfie, thank you so much for introducing us to your software and for showing us all the things that it can do. And I know that many of our viewers are going to be really excited and also interested in it because, like I said, what I've seen you do today has been absolutely unbelievable. And I can't wait to start playing around with it for myself. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, thank you for having me. We had a nice chat. That was wonderful. I loved it.
I loved it as well, Alfie. I loved it as well. And Alfie, I'm going to ask you right now whether or not you'd be willing to come back and talk to us a bit more about the financial astrology that you do when I start the financial track, because I really do want to hear, your insight into financial astrology as being one of the major astrologers in the world today who still practices that?
I tell you, I'd love to do that because I got my software that's called the Alphee Trading System. It sells for $500, and I made it low enough so that astrologers can afford it. And Mychal, you'll be surprised the feedback we're getting from it. People buys it, and in 2 weeks they say, "Alphee, I'm making money with the stock. Thank you so much." And it's a real good astrology software because I took all the best stuff and my other three financial and put it into this one for astrologers.
Alfie, you've given the world so much. And where does that come from within you when you look at your life with astrology and how much you've taught and how much you've shared and how much you've lectured and how much you've created? Where does that come from within you to want to give back to the astrological community
Well,
so much?
I want to tell you a story. You don't have to put it on here, but I want to tell you. All right. I'm Catholic. All right. And when my mother and my godfather and my godmother took me to the priest to get baptized, all right, the priest went to put water on my head to baptize me. And he asked my mother, "What are you calling him?" And she said, "Alfred." And the priest said, "No, no, 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 no." And my mother, like she nearly had a heart attack, because she didn't know. In those days, 1934, the priest was everything. If you were sick, they called the priest before they called the doctor. And so my mother says, "Well, what are we going to name him?" And he said, "We're going to name him a name that nobody else has because he's going to do something very important in this life, and his name has to stick out." And he named Alfie. And he said, "We're going to name him Alfie." And my mother didn't know how to spell it. So the next Sunday, she went to the rectory and he wrote it on the napkin, Alfie, in French with a little accent aigu, a little bar on the E.
Uh-huh.
And I still got the napkin. The priest
Alfie,
changed my name. Yeah. So this is why I feel that.
Alfie, you have one, that was an incredible story, and two, your generosity and how much you've done and how much you've given and how much you've shared and how much you're still continuing to do even after your Uranus return. You're still hard at it behind this astrology that you love so much, and we are all here standing on your shoulders and grateful to you for everything, because Horary astrology, you were blazing the trail for that even before it became in vogue, and so many other things that we do within our practice. So, from the bottom of my heart, Alfie, thank you for your service.
Thank you. We'll talk again, I'm sure.
We
All
most
right.
definitely will talk again.
We're going to connect.
Yeah, we will, Alfie. And for our listeners out there, thank you once again for joining in on the Oraculos True Divination podcast, where I bring you ancient wisdom for the modern mystic. And now, today, I feel like it shouldn't just be ancient wisdom for the modern mystic, because as astrologers, we are boldly charging a path forward towards the future. And Alfie has been here today, and he shared so much about what he's doing to blaze a trail for astrology towards the future. So maybe I have to update the update the tagline, but all the same, thank you all so much for being here, for being in this space to learn and to grow and to listen to great astrologers such as Alfie. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Alfie appreciates it. And if you want to stay a part of the momentum that we're building here on the podcast, please like and subscribe to the podcast, and also share this video with your astrological family and friends, especially now. These days, we have so much time to be home and to listen. Share it so that other people can benefit from hearing from astrologers like Alfie. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Be well, and until next time,
Thank you and God bless.
God bless. Bye. Alphee Lavoie. Alphee Lavoie.